This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Our world is one of duality, and we all possess both masculine and feminine energy. Collectively, we're stuck in the masculine energy of doing, checking items off of a list, getting things done, which is great in some situations. But we must not ignore our feminine energy, the energy of being, because there are many benefits in remaining in the present. Joining me today is Ann Hince, author of A Pathway to Insight, to chat about the power of awareness and remaining present. Welcome to the roller coaster, Ann.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
So I wanted to start off by asking you, what started you on this path to explore inner healing and the power of awareness?
Well, I think like most people these days, I had a lot of trauma in childhood, and I tried things over and over again. I tried many things, many diets, many different things, but nothing seemed to stick for very long or make a big difference for very long. So it wasn't until I was in my late 30s and I had two young boys. I was a stay-at-home mother, and I went to the doctor, and the doctor realized that I was more stressed than I really should have been in the situation I was in. And he asked me my stress level, and it was an 8 out of 10. And I knew straight away it was because the tears that I was still holding on from finding my mother dead in the bathroom when I was 19. So 2 decades earlier, the tears were still so close to the surface. And I hadn't resolved that. I hadn't let them go. So he tried this, or he used this strange technique with me in this office appointment. It's called EFT, short for Emotional Freedom Technique. I think a lot of people have heard of it these days. He used it with me for about 15 minutes, and I walked away from that doctor's appointment being able to tell the story of her death with no emotions arising. And to me, it felt like magic. It was just amazing that I could change so quickly. So that was the start of my journey, when I realized that I was holding these emotions in my body and they just stayed in my body. So I realized I could let them go. So I started doing that. I started using this technique daily. I would notice when I would become emotional around something, and I would tap. This is a tapping technique based on meridians. You're tapping on spots in the body, and it helps the energy release from the body. So I would do that on a daily basis, but I wanted more than that. So I actually wrote down all my traumas that I could remember from childhood, and I went through them one each day. And I could tell that my mind was becoming quiet, which was something else that encouraged me on my journey, because I had wanted to be quiet and peaceful like these other mothers I would see at school. They seemed to be calm all the time. And in my mind, I was so anxious and fearful. So I wanted that peace inside. So when I found it happening, it was great. I actually realized that the voice that had been criticizing me and criticizing other people in my mind had been my dad's voice. And I didn't realize that until it had gone. And then I could look back and see that it was my dad's voice that had been there. And it was so nice to have that voice gone and have some peace in my mind. But I wanted to go further still. It seemed like it was working really well. And I'd been in a group at the time, and this guy in the group said, it's not about meditation. You don't need to meditate, which sounded great to me. All you need to do is feel your feelings. Well, when I started on this journey, I didn't know what my feelings were. But I was tapping at the time of this group, and I was becoming more aware of not only my emotions, but the physical sensations underneath the emotions, right? Because when we have a feeling like fear, there's actually physical sensations associated with that word fear. And it's probably tension, at least for me, tension in the solar plexus and the abdomen, maybe tension in the jaw. So once I had let go of a lot of this baggage that I'd been carrying around, I became aware at a deeper level. And so once I got to this point, then I could actually try and do what he said, which was feel the feelings. So what I would do the dishes at the sink, and I would think a thought that had emotion attached, and I would, okay, I'm going to use this as a trial, how to work this out. So I would hold myself like a statue, because I was trying to hold on to those physical sensations, this tension in the stomach. I want to actually feel it, right? That's what he was trying to say, feel the feelings. So I would feel them. It's like I can feel that tension in the stomach, and I would talk to it. I would talk to this feeling, because I'm trying to get it to stay there. I'm trying to feel it, because I had spent decades suppressing these emotions. So what does it feel like to feel them and let them go? So at some point, I would need to take a deep breath, and I would relax, and then I would think the thought again. And I would notice that the emotion, the tension underneath the thought had dissipated somewhat. So I would do it again. I'd think the same thought over and over again, feel the feelings underneath it and let it go. And again, this helped. It helped my mind become quieter, because now these words were no longer associated with the physical tension. I'd let it go. So I would then do more. I'd lay on the sofa, and I would think of these collective traumas, like 9/11, like the Loma Prieta earthquake that I was in, like the tsunami, these big events. Bring up those feelings, allow them to express out of my body, and they would just be gone. And at some point, I noticed that I could keep my awareness inside my body. So then I started doing that too. And I can now, at this point, I can put my awareness inside my head, inside the connective tissue. And I do the same thing. I hold my awareness on it. I let it go. It just dissipates once I can focus on it long enough. And I just recently had some x-rays taken of my skull, and the whole skull structure has changed. My eye sockets have aligned. My jaw, which was way off to the side, is now centered. My neck is straightening, and even my tooth roots have grown. So it just blew me away once I saw the evidence of what I'd been able to feel happen on the inside. So that's where I am today. We are incredibly powerful beings.
We are. And there are so many different things that you touched on in what you just shared. I want to take a step back to just what the basics of EFT is, because I know it's tapping on the meridians, but I've also seen techniques where they're repeating phrases. Is that the technique that you used?
Yes, it is. And what EFT works with the negative. A lot of the videos you'll see online with EFT these days, they're working more towards the positive. But for my inner work, I know that it's just the negative that is stored in the body. So all we need to do is let go of the negative, and then the positive's there. So the power in EFT is fully accepting what we're actually feeling right now. So if we're trying to work on a past event, we'll bring the thoughts up so that we can recreate that feeling inside us from something that happened in the past. So the example I tend to use is my dad shouted at me. When I'm saying those words, can I put myself back in that place? My dad shouted at me. And then I can bring up that feeling. There was probably fear underneath it. And as I'm feeling that whatever those sensations are, whatever the emotions are, I am saying the words to myself. And I'm tapping on the ends of meridian points. There's 10 points that we tend to tap on. And we are saying the phrase again and again, because it's just like what I'm doing on the inside. We're doing this now with words on the outside. We just say it again and again. And each time we're releasing the charge held in the body from that memory. And eventually it will dissipate. So I might, if I'm really fraught about something that I'm thinking about, perhaps it was my dad shouted at me, right? When I start saying it and there's charge in my body, there's the intonation that I'm saying things with, right? I'm putting energy into the words. My dad shouted at me, right? As I tap that energy out of me and there becomes no more charge left, then I can just say it. It's like, my dad shouted at me. Yeah, that's what happens, right? There's no more charge left in the words. At that point, those words are now free. So and one of the great things, sorry.
I was just going to ask you, so the words that you're saying are actually, my dad shouted at me. You're just repeating exactly what it was. And I think that's different than what I've seen other videos that I found on YouTube where they'll say, although this happened, I'm a strong, capable woman.
Right. So that's the kind of the setup phrase. At the beginning, we'll do a setup phrase. And I've changed, I mean, there are many variations of EFT out there. I've changed it because of my experience with being able to feel inside and talking to people about the resistance that they feel around certain words. So the original phrase is, even though this happened, or I'm feeling this way, so even though I'm afraid, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Now, most people have some resistance to that phrase, I deeply and completely love and accept myself, because they don't. So I would rather them just work on what they want to work on. So I would say something like, even though I'm afraid, that's my truth in this moment, and it's okay that I feel that way. To me, that allows some relaxation into those words, which is what we're really looking for. And then when you're tapping, you shorten the phrase you're using. So that the words you use might just be, I'm afraid. And you can do it, there are many ways. If it's a story, I might tell myself the whole story. Well, my dad was shouting at me because I'd done this thing that I kind of feel bad about now, but he was shouting at me, I was in the living room, no one else was there, it was scary. So you can use the words, you're just using the words to bring up the emotion. And you don't even, if you're right in the middle of some kind of a traumatic event and the emotions are already alive in your body, you don't even need to say anything. All you need to do is tap it. Because the words don't mean anything at that point, right? We would actually probably take away from the emotion. You're just working with those feelings in the body.
Okay, that resonates me a little bit more because, and I've tried EFT and it just didn't feel natural because of the words that I was repeating. But your methodology, it just speaks to me better because, like you said, the words are more comfortable.
Yes. And what we're trying to do is find our total truth, our absolute truth in the moment. So that kind of comes up as you start working through the layers. You might not realize to begin with, or you might just know that my dad shouted at me, right? You might not realize, oh, I was afraid that my dad shouted at me. That's kind of a deeper level of awareness. And it's specific to each person. So yeah, on YouTube, the videos out there on EFT, there are a lot of scripts. So people will just tap with someone else's words, but unless they resonate fully with your actual truth, they're not going to be as beneficial, because you want to go down that neural pathway that's been stored inside your body for all these years, and you want to release it from you, which might not be those words that resonate or that don't resonate.
That makes sense. That makes a lot more sense to me. Now, quickly, can you just go over where the meridians are that we use when we're tapping an EFT?
Sure, I'll do the different points. The first point we start tapping on is called the karate chop point, which is on the side of the hand where you would hit on a table if you were hitting. And that's where you do the opening phrase. So even though my dad shouted at me, that's my truth in this moment, and it's okay that I feel that way. So that's where you kind of do the long sentence. And then you start tapping, the first point is the crown point, right where the cowlick is on the top of your head. And you're just tapping gently, fairly gently, about 5 to 7 times or so. And then you move on to the next point, which is the beginning of the eyebrow. And you're just tapping again, saying the same words. My dad shouted at me. Next point is the bone on the edge of the eye. My dad shouted at me. Next point is the bone under the eye. My dad shouted at me. The next point is under the nose on the upper lip. My dad shouted at me. The next point is on the chin under the lower lip. My dad shouted at me. The next point we call the collarbone point. The collarbones come across and down, and underneath there's a bit of a dimple right in there. My dad shouted at me. And the last point is about 4 inches under the armpits where your bra strap goes across if you have one. And my dad shouted at me. And then you take a deep breath, you let it out, and you see how things have changed. You can give yourself a number if you want, on 0 to 10, how much emotion is there at the beginning, and then how much is it now? And people normally notice something has shifted. If it hasn't, just do it again. And you just keep doing it again and again until if you feel relief. And one of the great things about EFT is it shows you that it's working. There's the tone that I mentioned, that you will start saying it more calmly, but also you might yawn, you might have tears, you might sigh, you might feel really, really tired. Some people burp. Those are all expressions of energy being released. And so you know that something has shifted, which I like to have evidence that something's working. So it's really nice.
Yeah, I think, anybody, when they're trying one of these modalities that aren't necessarily mainstream, they like to know that they're working. So if there are physical cues, then it just helps reinforce that what they're doing is actually producing a result.
It does, yeah. And you can try it out for yourself. One of the first things I did after my doctor's appointment is we had a 17-year-old cat that needed a daily saline shot, and I hated needles of any form. And the first time I did it with him, my hand was just shaking so much. I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it on a daily basis. So I thought, okay, well, I'll try it out. So I tapped about my fear of hurting the cat, my fear of shots in general, the past history I had around with shots. And the next time it just slid right in. And every other time it just slid right in. It was like there had been such a huge change. It was just great. So, that gave me the evidence I was looking for.
I think the evidence is going to be key to a lot of listeners, because it seems a little odd and it feels a little odd when you're doing it. But if you know that you're getting somewhere, it probably makes all the difference.
It certainly does.
The other thing you talked about was feeling your feelings. And I think, and that's why I want to bring in the male and the masculine and the feminine energy, because I think that's more of that feminine energy of being present and feeling what you're feeling. And I know a lot of people, including myself by default, when something hurtful or traumatic happens, you have a tendency to, put it in a little box and tuck it away in a dark little corner and pretend that it doesn't exist. And that is the completely wrong way to deal with anything, because I've learned the hard way that those little boxes have a tendency of popping open and spilling everywhere when you least expect it. So can you share a little bit more on feeling your feelings and how that then changes and releases what you're feeling?
Sure. Let me just go back to the little box there for a moment, though. So from my inner work, I have realized that we might think we're storing it in the box, but we're actually storing it in our body. It's a part of our body that we're then not looking at. We can't see it because we've hidden it away. And that's when dis-ease happens in our body. So we want to bring up these past traumas and look at them carefully and closely and observe them and allow them to pass through. And then they're no longer, that dis-ease is no longer left in our body. So yes, so I found this was a really powerful way of doing it, but I did find that it took some extra awareness in order to be able to do this, feeling the feelings. Right. So the first step that I did was EFT. And even to this day, if I get really caught up in something that's emotional, I will go to EFT first, because I don't have to be so involved. It's easy just to tap. It's harder to actually bring that awareness to, oh, how am I feeling in the body, because it's just so intense. But if it's something that doesn't feel quite so intense right now, it's a really powerful thing to do. So can we try it? You're open to trying it?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, so can you bring something up that maybe has some anger or some fear?
Absolutely.
Okay, so where do you feel it in your body?
I have a constant problem with my jaw.
Okay, so can you feel that emotion in there?
Yes.
Okay, so hold your awareness on it. And what I did is I actually held my breath. So don't do this if you're listening and you're driving or doing anything that's dangerous. But if you're sitting or lying down somewhere, you can do it. So just hold on to that feeling in your jaw. Hold your breath. Just just talk to it. Like, I can feel this tension in my jaw. I can feel it right there. And it's okay. I'm just going to let you be, because I've been suppressing you. And now I want to just feel you and just allow you to be right there. And at some point, you will need to take a deep breath. And when you do, just go ahead and do that. And then come back to that feeling in the jaw. And did it feel like something shifted a little bit?
Yeah, just before I had the sensation, it was seconds before you said you're going to need to take a deep breath. I could feel something let go in my jaw. And then I had the sense, it was almost as if you were saying, and then you're going to need to take a deep breath. It's like, was exactly what I need to do.
Right. So then if you think that thought, that fearful thought again, and you did the same thing, and if you did it over and over again, you would probably feel a release each time. And each time you're doing that, you are releasing tension in I believe it's the connective tissue of the body. And it will just ease up and ease up and ease up, because we've stored all that tension inside of us. And it's just letting it go, accepting it.
Well, you had mentioned in your x-ray that your jaw had realigned. And that's what I'm curious about myself, is that because of the year, and I'm going to say this has been going on, I think a dentist first noted it about 20 some years ago, but there is a difference in my face, that my jaw does shift to one side. So I'd be curious to see if.
Yeah. And I remember years and years ago, an orthodontist saying to me, "Oh, you must hold a lot of tension in your head." And I remember saying to him, "I don't think so."
Oh no, I've had, they keep trying to give me mouth guards, bite plates. And I'm like, I've gone through 2 of them, and I'm like, these things are useless, because it's basically hard molded plastic that they put over your teeth, which isn't comfortable in the first place. But that's just giving you a harder surface to clench on. And I'm like, I was worse off. I'm like, this is useless. I'm like, maybe if it was soft and spongy and relaxing, but nope. Oh, I didn't like that.
Yeah. So it was really interesting to me when I actually put my awareness inside my face for the first time. And I realized how much tension was really in there, and how much pain. I had so much pain inside my left cheek that I had never been aware of before. So as you go through this process, you're shown the deeper and a deeper layer each time, and given deeper and deeper work to work with and let go. And hopefully, I'm hoping at some point there will be an end, and there will be no more tension inside.
That's a good thought. And I'm curious, and you may not have the answer for this, but I'm curious about the connection between, holding the tension in the jaw and the, proximity to the throat chakra. And again, not being able to speak your truth.
It could be. I'm not fully, I haven't really connected all those dots yet. What I do know is that whenever I release energy anywhere in the body, or tension anywhere in the body, it always also releases either in my face, jaw, or neck. So I believe most of it starts probably in our face. And I think it starts probably from those facial expressions that we use as children when we're not allowed, or we don't feel comfortable expressing what it is we're feeling. That's, I believe, where we start to be programmed, and we start to hold that tension inside of us. And that tension in our fascia, in our facade, in our face, all the words fit together, then pulls other parts of our body out of alignment. So, the throat's pretty close. So there probably is there probably is a strong connection there.
Yeah, that would make sense. Now, there's one last thing that I wanted to touch on with you. And this is because we see the law of attraction, that topic coming up time and time again. And I'm always curious to chat with people about, their take on it. And I read in your notes that you have a different take on the law of attraction. So I was wondering if you could share that with us.
Sure. This has definitely been part of my journey. One of the realizations I had that really pushed me forward to do this work was that the law of attraction is working every second of every day. It's not something we utilize when we want to utilize it. It is happening. So everything that we have in our life now, we have attracted based on our signal. So if we want to change what we're going to get in the future, we need to change our signal. So every second of every day, I'm emitting a signal. And so what is it I can change? Well, my whole self is part of that signal. It's not just my thoughts. It's my size, it's my height, it's my hair, it's my clothes. That's all part of my signal. But the base part of my signal is that tension that I have stored inside of us, right? Because we talk about people being highly strung, right? People who are highly strung are very reactive. They've got a lot of tension stored inside of them, and that can change. So what is it that we can do to shift our base signal? And that's what I asked myself. And it's letting go of this tension stored inside of us from our past. And so that really encouraged me along the way. So as we're letting go of this tension stored inside of us, we're actually a more peaceful signal. And so we're attracting more peaceful events to us in the future. So it's very powerful, at least it was in my mind, to understand that.
That makes a lot of sense. I never sort of made that connection that, you could be setting all of the positive mindsets out into the world, but if at your core, you're still dealing with fear, anger, and tension, you're kind of sending out a mixed signal.
Absolutely. Yes. And just think of the word money. I mean, it's got so much history stored inside of all of us. And so that's, one of the things we can do is we can do tapping on just the word money, right? Even that itself would help clear the tension, the memories we have just associated with that one word.
So Ann, as we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts and words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I would love people just to become more aware of how they're reacting during the day, more aware of their signal. That was one of the things I started doing. It's like, okay, I'm putting off a signal right now, right? Every second, right now. Do I want this feeling back again? And if I don't, then I'm going to do something about it. So I can tap on it, I can feel those feelings, or I can relax and just change my signal right in this moment.
And where is the best place for people to connect with you?
I have a website, it's annhince.com. I also have a YouTube channel where I'm putting YouTubes, and you can see my x-rays up there. And I also have a public Facebook page that you can find me on, and I'm happy to answer any questions on there.
And this has been a pleasure. If anyone's listening and looking at connecting with Ann, make sure you check out the show notes. I will have all of the links in there. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creator.